Mr. Not So Perfect over here, and a lot of people in between, and how that all worked. I have a little background on these guys because I gave this talk to a FINA conference, and apparently they didn't know who Michael or Allison were, so they needed to know some things about them. But you can sort of see the timeline. Michael really started setting age group records at a fast pace when he was 13, 14. You probably have heard the stories. He was a hotshot 10-year-old, set a lot of, not a lot, but 3 or 4 NAG records. And then at 11, 12, didn't set any. And I attribute that to a couple things. A kid named Chaz Morton, primarily, who was like a man at 12. And my favorite one is the 200 IM short course, right? Michael was second all time at 2 minutes in the 200 IM. Chaz Morton was 156. And the other thing is we were really working on his strokes. And I spent a lot of time on that, and that probably kept him. I didn't crank him up quite as much as maybe it could have been. But by 13, 14, he was breaking a lot of records. First Olympic team in 2000, and got fifth. First world record the next year. Started breaking some of those, and the rest was pretty much known. Allison, I started working with in Ann Arbor, Michigan. Actually, in about 2005, she started swimming with us in the summers. And then every summer she swam with us. She made her junior team in 2006. 2007, she actually had qualified for the Pan Am Games in the relay. We decided to drop that and swim in the Japan Cup at the end of the summer so she could swim more than just a 200 in a one-time final. So she swam pretty well there, and then had a great year of training up to the trials for Beijing. Had a pretty disappointing Olympics, including getting 9th place in the individual 200 after being seeded 3rd, I think, or 2nd, and by missing a turn. So really a failed coaching job. And bronze medal on the relay. Again, leading off the relay, and she shouldn't have, and because she couldn't do a relay start, we let her off. Another failed coaching job in my opinion. 2008 to 11, she's been at the University of Georgia during the school year. She's been with us in the summers, and then last year she was with us for the whole summer, winter, and summer. And she ended up pretty good. We were happy with it. This, I went to Florida State University. I think there's something missing on here, but I don't know why. I did get a degree in developmental psychology, and the rest is history. I work with some good people. Let's get into the meat of what we're talking about. This is what the annual plan looked like. And this is just how I do it because I can see kind of a year in general terms on a one page. And it kind of gives the athletes an idea of where the meets are, where important things are going to occur, and a little bit about what the training is like, both at Dryland and in swimming. So you can kind of see how this is like. What I do more specifically than this is I take the Speedo competition calendar that they give out at every ASCA clinic, and I write lots of specific things on that, like how many days until this thing, where will the camps be, what are the meets, what are different kind of training phases, and I have that on my wall and look at it all the time. And by the way, the one they're handing out here, the red one, you can't do that with, so I had them make me one of the old ones for this year. So they're going to go back to an old school if you were like me and like to laminate those and write all over them. The red ones are prettier, but I think it's hard to do. So this is how the season's set up. And if you look under training phases, you see that's kind of in the water. And it's very general, right? I mean, let's get real. This thing that we're doing here, there's a lot of subjectivity to it. This is just a general way to organize it. And I think if you make it too scientific and too regimented, you lose the art of it, and also you lose a lot of the effectiveness of it. Because the athletes aren't regimented and scientific necessarily. They even vary from day to day. At least mine do. So there's a preparatory phase where you're just trying to work on technique and slowly build up some volume of work and get them ready to do something. There's an endurance phase. Use this handy dandy pointer right here, where you're predominantly building capacity. I don't know, some of you may have heard this talk that I gave about capacity utilization. That's capacity work. The mix phase is when you start putting in more utilization kind of training. And then I put in a little endurance refresher, around Christmas time, because don't we all love to do that? And then mixed, and it just kind of alternates. It's not that big a deal. The real periodization for my program happens in the microcycle, which would be the weekly plan and how that's set up. Below it, I use just sort of the strength training plans we went through, anatomical adaptation, the preparatory phase. That's just doing a lot of exercises to prepare the tendons and ligaments to do some strength work later. Hypertrophy is doing work that basically increases the size and number of muscle fibers, or the size of the muscle fibers. Basic strength work. And then power work would be using more of a speed component with that, hopefully in some way that might help swimming get faster. And then you just sort of repeat that as well. You can see, just to kind of tell you how it works, in the endurance phase, obviously you're working on maximum endurance capabilities, and then your speed work is sort of progressive. I'm sort of sneaking that up during that. And I'm of the belief that you have to do all types of training all the time. You cannot just do endurance training for months on end, and then just do speed training for months on end, because you have to juggle. You have to maintain each system, so you have to touch it. If you don't train it, it atrophies. So this is just a way that I organize in my head at a very basic level, and that the kids can see how things operate. Up at the top, we have our competitions, in the yellow, and I kind of rate them on importance. The light blue are probably more important than the dark blue. The red, super important, really, really important. Domestic or international, you can kind of pick. You see on here we did a lot of training camps. This was due to the fact that we had an opportunity to do that because, Michael had some sponsor obligations and they were happy to pay for a group of kids to go somewhere like Miami for 2 weeks. I was happy to go. It's a great game. I'm sorry I don't get to play anymore. We really like Michael to come to Miami for 2 days in January. No, he can't do it. Well, why? So, well, he's got to train, so it has to be at least 2 weeks. Okay, we'd love for Michael to come for 2 weeks in January. Well, no. Well, why can't he do that? Because he needs to have a group of people to train with. So he needs to bring all the postgrads with him. Okay, well, we'll take you, the postgrads, the strength coach. So that's how it works. It's a great game. So the next thing you know, we're in Miami for 2 weeks, and things are good. But the one you probably noticed the most are the altitude camps. And I'm a proponent of altitude training. I think it works. Not really sure why it works. We've done quite a lot of studying. But my biggest belief is that it works because you're just focused on swimming 24/7 for a period of time. Okay? And you eat right there, you do your strength training right there, you do all the swimming. It's contained in Colorado Springs. It's free. That's the best part for the kids that we took. So it's very cost effective for us to do. So we did a camp here after doing some international meets. We did a long camp here, and then we did what we would traditionally do every year is after this meet at Charlotte, we do a camp until whatever the next meet is. It happened to be a meet in Austin that we went to this year, which worked out quite well. And then I did something really different that I have never done before. It was kind of a gamble, but it worked out really well. We went back to Colorado Springs until the trials. Tapered at altitude. I've always wanted to taper at altitude. And this year presented itself as a great opportunity because things were starting to get really crazy around Michael. Number one, I kind of had him in jail, so I knew he'd show up all the time, really. But number two, he was getting everybody in our pool was convinced that every practice he swam would be the last time they saw him swim. So we had 5 people with a video camera. People would be trying to get his autograph. People would ambush him in the locker room or the parking lot. So it just got crazy for everybody because I was spending half my time trying to police him. So we just went to Colorado and all that went away. So we were able to really relax and get ready for the trials, and I think in very good fashion. We went through the trials, and then we went home for 3 3 days, and then had training camp in Knoxville, and then in Vichy, and then went on to the meet. At the bottom, this thing about kind of charting mileage. I just kind of make that up, but it just gives you a feel for it, right? Like, this is kind of what I want to do. I probably, if I was a good coach, I'd go back and write what we actually did and compare it, but this is just in my mind when we start the year is kind of how I feel like it should be. Okay? All right. Training phases, kind of went through those. But I think the real difference is in the mixed period, you're doing utilization training where you're really trying to do very specific work. If it's endurance work, it's specific endurance work. And I'll kind of go into what that means as we look at these practices. And if you're doing quality work, it's speed work at or faster than the race pace, something relative to the event. The taper, unload the volume, and later intensity, see what you can do. And then one thing I think that we do very well in the States, and I'm finding out other countries do absolutely terribly, is this thing. So I will talk a little bit about that as we go forward. Any questions about any of this before we go? Excellent. Okay. This is what a week would look like, a sample microcycle. And it's very basic, but it's just a way to organize training, right? So what we would do, I went to 3 mornings this year instead of 4, or sometimes in the camps it's a little different, but when we're at home, we rarely work, but when we're home we do 3. And when we taper, we would do 3 mornings a week, because I just felt like they benefited from the 2 mornings off, and it's just a nice way to keep everything organized. So you see that the Monday and Friday mornings are the same, and there's some sort of power or overload training. So for the middle distance athletes, or the more sprint-oriented athletes, this would be resistance training with chutes, or vertical kicking with weight. We did a lot of this year. We did some underwater work. We would do stretch cords, the basics. And then some swimmers would do some supplemental aerobic work after if they needed to, running, bike riding. We'd set up a circuit, whatever we felt like they needed to do. Wednesday morning, it's basically a recovery where we work on some sort of technical work, maybe some light, what I would call technical speed work, some short fast sprints so they can get their strokes together, maybe starts or turns, that kind of thing. And then we come to the afternoons, which are the main training things that we do. Monday and Thursday, threshold training is basically endurance training. And for me, this threshold training means up to threshold. I rarely go above what you'd consider a red pace. If anybody knows how that works. I would go white, pink, red. Spend almost the whole time on that end of the spectrum. Occasionally they would go up to a blue or something, but I don't do a lot of rainbow work on these. On Tuesday we would do active rest work, which is basically easy fast type of work. It's like 50% aerobic, 50% anaerobic, which I think is critical to success in 200 meters, 400 meters. And then on Wednesday and Saturday, we would get after it with some sort of lactate production or tolerance, max VO2 type training, where they would really go for it. We have a little bit of the Dryland training that they would do. The strength training is basically Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday. I don't like doing threshold training, then go right into strength training, but that's just kind of how it worked out. It's one of those decisions you have to make. I always want to do the strength training after the main workout, because for me, the swimming is what's important. I don't want the swimming to be compromised by the weightlifting. So that's how we did it. It seems to work for us. We would do core work on these 2 days, which might be medicine balls. It's not just doing sit-ups. It could be a lot of different things. The strength training, and for the women particularly, we did a lot of crazy things, like they pulled sleds out on the beach. The guys would run against the sled. We made this homemade sled out of a shopping cart. It's kind of fun. But we did a lot of different things on dry land to sort of complement what we're doing in the water. Okay. Somebody actually gave me a very big picture of this nicely framed after the Olympics and put it in my office. And after about 2 months, I had to take it down and take it home because I couldn't stand them yelling at me like, screaming at me. But the moral of this slide is, your attitude is most important. We all have our ideas about what's good about training, what's not good about training, what you should do, what you shouldn't. Whether you use I think I was once attributed to using huge mileage theories. I'm not even sure what that is, but one of the nice bloggers put that up about me, and which I don't think is true. But we all have ideas about what you should do, right? What really matters is how you do it and how you approach the work, because almost virtually anything will work. I think anything will work if you believe in it, at least in the short term. But what matters is you have to believe in it, the kids have to believe in it, and it just has to be the culture of your program. And I would spend as much time on that as I do on any kind of, designing a training program or buying equipment or trying to come up with something new to keep them interested. If they're not interested, then they need to be playing golf or something. You make them interested by getting them to buy into the culture of your team. Our culture is very simple. It's the disciplined pursuit of excellence. What's MBAC all about? It's about the disciplined pursuit of excellence. Not the crazy, undisciplined, do what you want pursuit of excellence. The disciplined pursuit of excellence, which that implies a certain manner of operation. It implies a certain way that we coach. It implies what we expect of the athletes. Everybody who walks through the door knows what they're going to get, which makes it really nice because we don't have to weed people out because they know what to expect. We've been doing it since 1968. So, that's what I'm talking about when I talk about culture and attitude. Let's look at some practices. This is the actual Halloween practice. And this is what the kids would get. I would make enough copies of these per lane, usually a few more because they all like to hold it before practice and look at it, look at it, look at it. And then as soon as we start, like, what's the first thing? Like, you've been reading this for, the only thing they look at is this. Oh, sorry, it's that deal. That's the total. I always add up the total, just so I kind of know. And I'm always wrong. That's Michael's favorite thing in the world. Excuse me, you didn't add this up right. That's the first thing. He'll start adding everything as soon as he gets it to see if the total is right. I'm like, well, what difference does it make? You're going to do it anyway. It's like, I know, but you're wrong. Like, okay, fine. Every now and then, I'm wrong. But this is what we did on Halloween. I just wanted to show this because we're at Colorado for that camp. So the intervals are different than what they might be down below. They're probably a little bit slower, but we haven't been there a while, so they're moving pretty well. And this, to me, is kind of a specific endurance practice. We're putting a little bit of specific endurance in because these guys over here are doing their stroke with some freestyle. And of course, these guys are just doing the get ready for a 1500 thing. Everybody will do the same warm-up, the same preset, and I like to include sprints at the beginning of every practice so they're sort of fresh. It's good to tune up their strokes, get them ready to go. Research indicates that actually endurance work is better after you do some of this. Then we would do kick. We are big believers in kick. They do a 300 easy kick and 4 150s. Best you can hold. Pretty hard at altitude long course. Don't feel like you have to write all this down, so I'm going to make this PowerPoint available to you, okay, so you can have this. For a small fee. Only $25. No, I'm kidding. I'll make sure we have it. So on these, our guys really kick hard when we get to something like this. Like Allison got really good on these 150s. Like, I want to say, under 210, pretty good, right? The long course at altitude, it's going pretty good. We did a lot of different kicking kind of things. Then we do a little something just to kind of warm them up again, and then start the main thing over here, which is 650s, 2 on a minute, 2 on 55, 2 on 50. I say best you can hold, but I go to each one of these people and tell them the time, which is the best they can hold. And it's about a second slower than 200 bits. So Michael's goal on here was all 29s, which at sea level would be really easy, but at altitude, no matter how long you've been there, not that easy. Because I wanted a certain number of strokes too. He had to go 29s and 19 or less strokes. Allison did fly, which she did a lot of. That was kind of her second stroke, and I believe her goal was 32s. And all I wanted to do was 32 on these and swim 3/100s free smooth and keep doing it. But you'd be amazed how much you can learn about what they're doing as this interval comes down, and they have to hold that pace, and they have to hold their stroke count. So there's a lot of good time here to talk with them, to kind of encourage them to do things differently, to ask them how many strokes they took. You know, another one of my favorite things, they've got, like, they're on a minute, right? They swim 29, and I come up and do this, and Michael just goes, like, that means he was 19, right? So that means he didn't do anything. But there is invariably somebody, like, chasing me, huh? I'm like, I want to ask you when your birthday is. What do you think I want to know in this 10 seconds? I just told you to go. He was doing breaststroke, chase, right? So he had to be, I think, 34s, 34 or 5. And he had to be, you know, a certain stroke count, 15 strokes, maybe. So that's what I always get a kick out of that, because it's like, have you never done this before? It's like, that's the only thing I ever ask you, what your heart rate is and how many strokes you took. I know your times. I'm usually not too happy with it. And then we kind of finished with some stuff, just a little bit of technical work, drilling, snorkel fins. But you can kind of get a feel for that. And while those guys are doing this, Jillian Ryan and Cameron Morris are over here just kind of doing this lateral. Some of you would say, that's just garbage yardage. I would say no. That's capacity work. We're at altitude. They know how to swim a set like this. You have to learn how to manage your resources when you do a set like this. You can't just attack this, because you're going to have it down here. And really, these are pretty good intervals. By the time we got to 115, down at sea level will be nothing, but at altitude, that's fairly tough. And both of these girls had pretty good summers, Jillian particularly. And I don't know what it means, but I don't think they hardly ever went over 8,000. And Jillian made the national team in the 10K, and basically what we did was drive her down there, and she swam the course the day before and swam the race. That's the only thing we did for her. So I think if you're fit and you have the right mindset, this is really helpful. I normally put artwork if there's a holiday. That's a bat, and that's a pumpkin. And I usually always have a quote on there. You can take a look at those later. Kind of during the same camp, a few days later on Thursday, this is an active breast practice. And man, kind of my go-to practices, right? I love this IM set. This is my 400 IM kind of go-to thing. And I play with it all the time. Normally I would go 8 times 50-50. I did fly here. A lot of times I like to go 6 times 100 back, 6 times 100 breast, 6 times 100 free, and then put the 850 slide at the end. Just for fun, right? But today I thought we would go in the regular order and just kind of do it a little bit differently. The fly, I like them to descend 1 to 3 and hold it so they hurt themselves a little bit. And these intervals are very generous. At sea level, that would be 120, that would be 2 minutes, that would be 130 probably, and that would be 145 or something, or whatever. I mean, yeah, it would go pretty fast. But they're going to do this swim, they're going to get their time, they're going to go right into the easy. Okay? So they're always moving. The rest is active, meaning moving. And then I'll have a little bit of chance, an extra 30 to regroup as they come back. But the goal here is to get down to IM pace and hold it, or to get down to IM pace on number 3 and 6 of the hundreds. And they actually did a pretty nice job on this. Michael was really starting to get some decent training going here. I remember on the backstrokes, we were pretty happy because he was under a minute on both of those in this set, which is kind of where he needed to be. Ultimately, it wasn't. Breaststroke is really good for everybody. And then you just kind of see how you can vary the distances and the rest. If you wanted to do this set where they could really crank it up a little bit, then you'd go 100 back and 100 easy. Start playing with it that way. It just takes all day. Swimming easy a lot. I kind of like more density too. Then some more stuff at the end. The freestylers, So Allison's over here. You know, Sierra Runge, this tall girl we have, swimming pretty well. Jillian. They're doing the same thing, all freestyle. And they're trying to descend down to as fast as they can. I don't think you can legislate it quite as much. You can kind of see where they are up here and say, all right, let's see if you can't get down to, you know, 135 on these or something. You just pick whatever you think they can do. By the time they get to the end, we're turning it into more of a distance set where they descend 1 to 3 and hold it. And that should be at 800 speed, hopefully. Mile speed, some speed. Hopefully not slow, although you know how it is. We get it sometimes. And then the 50s at the end, that would be at 400 speed on 130. And I think they actually were doing a pretty nice job in that. Yeah. Question about this? You can look at it in detail later, but I just wanted you to get a feel for how it goes, types of training. Yes? Yes?
So everything in a bracket they do is a straight swim.
Everything in a bracket is a straight swim, except there's a break. Like, so they're going to swim at 200, and they're going to come in and touch, pick their head up, and I'm going to say 212, and then they're going to do that 50. So they're going to stop long enough to get their time, either look at the clock or hear it, then they're going to do the 50, then the interval comes up. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yes, they stop long enough to get their time. Yeah?
Down to the bottom left corner, the snorkel work.
Yeah.
This is 53, what's 838?
Oh, 838 is a rotation drill where, you know, they're going to have the snorkel on and they're going to go in a catch position on their side and take 8 kicks. And then they're going to go 3 strokes, 1, 2, 3 to the other side. So 838. It's just a little lingo. They're swimming breaststroke in a flat position, so they're not picking their head up, you know. And then 3TS is, we got triple touch switch, is 1, 2, 3, and then switch arms. 1, 2, 3. Okay. I don't think there's anything too exciting here. This is like a morning practice. So, you know, would be a typical thing we would do. And I kind of went 2 ways this year. We had the group that was doing the resistance training, which would be, you know, Michael and Allison certainly most of the time. And let's look at that first. We have kind of a mixed warm-up. And then we would do something we do a lot of. We would do 8 times 40 seconds vertical kicking. So that's with the weight. Allison, I think, is at 15 pounds. Michael, probably 25-pound weight. Mainly dolphin kicking, sometimes flutter kicking. But they have to kick the whole time when they get to rest. And at the end, we do 4 times 5 rockets, which is pushing off the bottom of the streamline, taking as many dolphins as they can, trying to get their suit out of the water and take as many kicks as they can. Swim 100 easy, do some basic pulling and drilling, and then they would use chutes, you know. They would go 1 moderate, 2 fast, 6 of each if there are IMers, or maybe Allison would go 6 fly, 6 free, that's what 6 and 6 means. And then put on fins and just do some basic sprints, 25 fast, 25 easy, 2 of each. Pretty basic. We would all do stretch cords here sometimes, instead of fins. We have one of those rocket towers, which is great, except one person in one lane can use it. So sometimes we figure a circuit out where that could come in a little bit, maybe. And on the other side, I basically just always try to get 7,000 in less than an hour and a half. So they would just go through, and see they do a long pull, 2,000 pull descending, put their fins on, and they do a 300 fairly, you know, negative split long course, and then 650s on 45 hard fly. So they got a little work in the morning, but basically muscular endurance work is what they're doing, and they would end with some speed, just to kind of get back to a stroke that was relative to something they would use in the meet. All right. Okay. What's important now? I thought I would share a couple things about coaching these guys and how I adapted to what was going on, or didn't adapt at some points to what was going on. Coming into this year, I spent basically from the end of 2009 until about the middle of 2011 being mad 24 hours a day at a certain someone. And I think that stemmed from several things. You have to understand that from the time Michael was, 11 until the Beijing Olympic Games, so about 12 years, I had an 18-wheeler full of things that I could use to get him to do what I wanted. So I could try this, I could ask him to do it, I could logic him into it, I could sell him on it, I could force him to do it, I could threaten him into it, I could get his mother to make him do it, I could guilt him into it, I could bribe him into it. I had a million ways to get him to do what I wanted, and he did exactly what I wanted that entire time. And you saw the results. Well, after Beijing, I didn't have anything that worked. I couldn't make him do anything I wanted. As a matter of fact, it was the opposite of that. So I was mad about that. I was mad that he wasn't doing the work. They didn't seem to be motivated. I was mad because I felt guilty that all the other people had to deal with me because I was the best, right? Everything really don't. I mean, that's where I think you really find your problems, particularly, I'm talking about high school kids that I mainly deal with, or people that swim 400s. If I got somebody who swims a 50-free long course, that's it, or short course, maybe a different story. But just change one thing at a time. So the first thing we cut is volume, and then when you get to the end, you cut the intensity because the volume's already low. Volume stays constant, intensity goes out. I suppose you could do it another way too. I know Steve Bowman likes to keep the volume up and cut the intensity. It works. Anything works as long as it makes sense and you believe in it. But I don't think you can change too many things at one time and keep track of it. The next thing you know, everything's kind of bad and you don't know what to change because you changed everything. You know what I mean? When you change one thing, then you know if it's working or not, and then you can just make a simple adjustment to get back on track. This was 18 days before London, and I put this in to show you that we actually did work after the first taper. It's not just keep resting. So this is in Tennessee, and this is a typical set that we might do after, they do their sprints, they do some pulling, kicking and pulling. This is like a classic NBAC set. We'd actually call this maybe a Beth Bondsman set. So you go 3 75s, 25 kick, 25 drill, 25 swim, and then you swim one. Michael did 12 back, 12 breath, and they kind of descended the swims because they were like before the Olympics, so they didn't want to just kill them. But they were really getting going, and they were moving. They didn't have a lot of time to sit on the wall. So it's a great way to keep your skill work up, kind of touch on capacity work, yet keep your speed going. We'll finish up with fins. And actually, this set was Allison, Ariana, Charlie, Michael, and then oddly Matt Grievers was in my group, so he was over here. So I had those four do that and he did that. But it was actually kind of a good group, and I learned a ton from helping Matt. That was great. So this just gives you what might happen after your first shave. And what I would tell you about that is I heard from Peter Dalen a long time ago, and that is on your second shave, count the number of days. At the midpoint of that, build up to 3/4 of your peak mileage. Cut back more than you did the first time. Guarantee you that works. It's worked for Michael every Olympics. This way I've done it every time. So, build up to 3/4 of your peak mileage. The intensity is relatively the same. Cut back more than you did on the first taper. Question about this set? It's a little confusing. You might want to look at it longer sometimes, but once you see it, it's a very simple pattern, and it's a great way to get, 75s are a great distance in short course to kind of get a little speed because they can't just sprint at like a 25 or 50. They have to hold a better stroke, and you get the underwaters. You get a lot of benefits, particularly in breast and back. Okay. Look, there's some preparation needs opportunity. And there you go. Start playing. I think that's right. I did the math today, but I'm pretty sure that's correct. I think we're at 10 o'clock, but I'll take like 2 questions if you have them, 1 or 2. Anybody have a question? Yes?
When Michael first appeared at a world-class level,
Yeah.
And particularly in the 200 slide, it seemed to be the most remarkable thing about him was his closing
Right.
Do you think that was just an intrinsic ability he had, or do you attribute that to things you did in his training?
No, we absolutely coached him that way, but what came with that is he's taking it out too slow to be competitive. So while that was a great way to start him out, right, because he felt really confident all the time, at the Olympics he missed out on the medal because he took it out too slow. Had he pushed it, he probably would have been third. So we teach all of our kids to swim the back half first, and it's always easier to get them to go out faster and to get the balance. But our method was swim it smooth and easy till the last 50, then we would say, step on the gas, and then he would. So we taught him to swim it that way, largely because we felt the other people didn't swim it that way. So it gave him something unique, and it's a great way to teach kids to swim. I would teach any great swimmer to do that first. Allison, we did the same thing with her. Yes?
Why breathing every stroke and fly?
Okay, why breathing every stroke and fly? There actually are some reasons for that. Number one, Michael is a kick-dominant butterfly. Okay? And we've done quite a bit of work on his underwater video, looking at his stroke. And when he breathes, it sets up the lower half of his body, just because of the way he's built, so that he can get exactly, 90 degrees at his knees, which is what we'd like to have to kick. Okay? When he doesn't breathe, and his head's down, he can't get 90 degrees, his feet come out of the water a little bit. So what we find is he can't set his feet on the water as well when he doesn't breathe. So it has as much to do with that, and he naturally came into that, right? Then we started saying why. But when you look at his body, that's how it works. And in practice, you'll actually see him rev his stroke up by, maybe he's doing a repeat, he's breathing every stroke. He'll deliberately not breathe for 2 or 3 strokes, so that when he does breathe on the next stroke, it looks like he's shot out of a rocket. When he doesn't breathe, he kind of sputters, and that's because his legs aren't as effective. So that's why he does it. We do it with all our kids in North Baltimore because I think more air is better, and if they can do it in a good rhythm, they should do it. There are some kids that I have assigned to do breathing patterns because I didn't think they were effective. But in general, I feel if they can do it in a good rhythm, they're going to be better off in a 200 or 400, which all our kids swim, with breathing every stroke. Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate it.